Amazingly inspiring. Orphan girl abandoned on a trail transformed by a kind cowboy's unexpected kindness. Clara trudged along the dusty trail, her tired feet beating a rhythm against the parched earth as the sun blazed overhead. Each step felt like a rebellion against the foster home that had tried to curb her fire, reducing her to a shadow of herself. With no plan and a heart full of longing, she craved more than survival. She craved a family to call her own. Today, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was defined by every dirt-streaked corner of the West, each mile pulling her deeper into unknowns. Her mind raced, swirling with fear and hope. What if this path led to more disappointment, just another part of a lifetime of abandonment? Her gut twisted at the prospect. Aurora, the curly-haired girl next door back in the home, had once talked about family like it was a treasure. Clara yearned for that treasure. Yet the walls she built to protect herself from pain were strong. She had learned that instead of trusting, she should brace for hurt. A sudden sound broke through her thoughts, hoofbeats in the distance. Clara's heart quickened, and she froze, entangled in a web of curiosity and dread. Was it a mirage, an illusion conjured by the desert sun? When a rugged cowboy appeared on horseback, she felt her breath hitch. Jake. His rough exterior spoke of struggle, and for a moment, Clara saw his burdens, ones she shared but had never voiced. Before she could recoil into her familiar shell of avoidance, Jake spotted her and reined his horse to a halt. "You lost, girl?" His voice was rough, but there was an undercurrent of concern. Clara felt a strange urge to respond, yet doubt wormed its way into her heart. "Or just running away," he added, studying her with piercing eyes. Caught in the tension of her own truth, Clara forced a wry smile. "Just taking a walk." Jake chuckled, shaking his head. "Looks more like a desert trek to me." Just as guilt surged through her, was she running? An idea sparked. Clara had always found ways to survive. "I know how to fix things," she blurted, uninvited confidence filling her voice. "Tools broken once. I can make them work again." Surprising herself with her boldness, she could see the hint of interest in Jake's eyes. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. There was a flicker of hope that blazed in Jake's expression. Together, they turned toward the ranch, where the looming shadows of problems darkened the horizon. Yet as they worked side by side, Clara felt alive for the first time. Yet, behind that newfound joy, a familiar terror festered. Would she become just another burden to him? Her mind spiraled into disheartened thoughts, pondering if he would eventually look at her with frustration like everyone else. With each passing day, the whispers of danger swallowed the air around them, amplifying her anxiety. The drought threatened Jake's ranch, and Clara's fear of rejection clawed at her throat. Just as hope welled, a corporate developer's name, slick and menacing, echoed through the town, promising to seize the land that had once thrived as their family legacy. In that fraught moment of discovery, Clara's heart raced as the weight of her lineage surfaced, the tangled past shrouded in secrets. Would her findings unite them, or sever the fragile bond they had started to weave? The stakes soared as uncertainty crackled like dry tinder waiting to ignite. Torn between her desire for belonging and the fear of uprooting hidden truth, Clara stood on a precipice, straddling the lines of family and loyalty, racing toward a confrontation that could shatter them both. Clara's hands trembled as she faced the sprawling expanse of the ranch. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that mirrored the uncertainty gnawing at her heart. Jake's world was at stake, and her re-emerging feelings of kinship collided violently with the familiar pangs of trepidation. Would her revelations burden him further or reveal a unity that could weather this storm? She resumed their work rhythm, heartened by the delicate mechanical tasks of repair. Fixing broken tools became a sanctuary, a methodical distraction that shielded her from the growing dread of what lay ahead. Yet, each turn of a wrench seemed to deepen her unease. Why was she so terrified of failure, of speaking the truth? "Clara." Jake's voice sliced through her reverie. He stood beside a rusted fence post, eyes narrowed skeptically at a broken plow she had just fixed. Can you give it a try? The weight of his scrutiny almost crushed her. She hesitated, second-guessing her instincts. What if she failed? But in that moment, she remembered the spark igniting within her at the idea of family, the hope that flickered like a solitary candle. Taking a breath, Clara climbed onto the plow's seat and grasped the worn handles, feeling the familiar tension dissipate into a controlled focus. With one determined push, she propelled the plow forward. It screeched and groaned, resisting her efforts. She grit her teeth, muscles taut with effort, pouring every ounce of her spirit into it. Suddenly, it lurched forward, cutting through the soil with surprising ease. Laughter echoed from behind her, and Clara felt her heart swell alongside the elation spilling from her lips. Jake's pride in her achievement reflected in his bright blue eyes, kindling a fleeting sense of acceptance within her. For the first time, Clara allowed herself to believe in her capacity to contribute, to belong. Yet, as evening crept in and the sky turned dusky pink, reality crashed back with oppressive weight. The developer, a chilling specter, loomed over their lives like a storm on the horizon. His name was whispered in hushed tones, his plans to raise the ranch weighing heavily on Jake's broad shoulders. The drought swirled in Clara's mind, a dire prophecy that threatened to dry up every source of connection and hope. What is the next step? Clara's voice quivered, gathering fragments of courage. The phrase felt foreign as she finally proposed being part of a solution rather than a burden. We can compete, right? Jake rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture of unease. It's complicated. Show me the details, she urged, her pulse quickening with an urgency that surprised her. We need a plan. Together, they spread out the brittle documents and maps cluttering the dimly lit table at the ranch. Clara's fingers traced the faded lines of property borders, and her insides bubbled with determination not just to support Jake, but to fight for something greater than herself. With every piece of information absorbed, Clara honed in on the strategies, the options, the impossible odds before them. Her mind raced, teetering on the edge of exhaustion but brimming with clarity. What risks could they take? If they united, they might stand up against the looming threat. The thought of failure gnawed at her resolve, yet she steeled herself with a fiery resolve. This was not just about their survival. It was about choosing to battle against a history of abandonment. As Clara navigated the labyrinth of emotions and plans, the inevitable reality dawned on her. They were on the brink of not just losing a ranch, but a home, a future. As she turned to Jake, urgency in her eyes, she whispered, "We have to fight." The fear of what the fight might reveal loomed like a dark spectral cloud overhead, urging her to confront not only the emotional stakes but the fragments of her own shattered past. The decision to face the truth, to embrace the potential of unity, hung heavily in the air between them. With determination settling in her chest, Clara felt a burgeoning brightness flicker against the walls she had built around her heart. Yet, just as hope bloomed, an uncomfortable question nagged at the back of her mind. What if the truth about her own lineage threatened everything she had begun to build with Jake? The time had come to face her past, and the very conflicts entwined within it. Clara sensed the tide of her life shifting as the sun dipped behind the horizon. The ranch was a mix of shadows and the cacophony of distant rustling leaves. Anticipation thrummed in her veins as she glanced back at the documents sprawled across the table. Plans, legal jargon, and agricultural maps felt like riddles begging to be deciphered. The looming threat of the developer felt insurmountable, yet Clara's vision burned sharper than before. "Let's talk strategy," she urged Jake, a newfound urgency propelling her forward. "These documents might not just be paperwork. They could be our lifeline." He looked at her, surprise flickering in his eyes, but also a glimmer of the trust he had begun to place in her. "Yeah, all right." His voice was cautious, but Clara detected an underlying eagerness that connected them. As they dissected the materials, Clara felt a revelation unfold within her. Analyzing the text was not just a means to an end. It became a puzzle she was determined to solve. Her mind turned, flowing from one possibility to another, uncovering pathways to preserve their way of life. With each idea proposed grant applications, community outreach, even legal loopholes, her confidence swelled. Have you considered reaching out to the local farm associations for support? Clara suggested, her voice steady and strong. They might have resources we aren't aware of. Jake paused, his brow furrowed as though her suggestion was both brilliant and bewildering. That might actually work. He shook his head in disbelief. I didn't think you'd have all this in you. Neither did I, Clara admitted, a nervous chuckle escaping her lips. The self-doubt that had nearly consumed her seemed to recede, replaced by the realization that she was coming into her own. Each suggestion laid out more synergy than vulnerability. She was standing not just as Jake's ally, but as an individual ready to carve out her own place in their fight. Emboldened, she leaned forward. We have to prepare for their next move. What do we know of the developer? His plans? Displacement. Control. Greed. Jake's voice dripped with disdain. He wants this land to build luxury condos. Displace one for more. That's the usual song, Clara replied, the words echoing her inner fight. But we want to be easy prey. There's power in numbers. The pressure to act pushed her toward harsh truths. As the night deepened, Clara found herself shifting closer to Jake. They worked in perfect, focused concert, building not just a defense, but a burgeoning connection. In every small moment, whether it was the shared smiles after a successful brainstorm or exchanges of barely spoken thoughts, she felt the boundaries of their relationship shift. Then she felt a wave of that familiar, deep-rooted fear. The burgeoning unity stirred echoes of her past, memories of abandonment and untrustworthy alliances. What if she failed to protect this newfound bond, too? She clutched at the edges of the map before her heart thrumming ominously. Jake, what if her voice faltered as she struggled to voice the unthinkable? The calm before the storm twisted into uncertainty, and the pressure coiled in her chest. What if they find out who I am, where I come from? What if I'm a burden rather than a help? Jake straightened, absorbing her words with an intensity that shifted the air around them. Clara, any past or future, none of that will decide who you are now. Your choices and your resolve define you. His eyes bored into her, as if urging her to confront her fears. A pulse of warmth ignited within her, but doubt lingered just under the surface, like a tempest waiting to break. What would it mean for her fight and her relationship with Jake if her past were to come to light? As those thoughts tangled in her mind, Clara realized she had to confront these shadows before they could consume any hope she had. The fight against the looming threat was more than about saving the ranch. It was about saving herself and reconciling with the ghosts that haunted her from an abandoned lineage. And with that fragment of resolve, Clara steeled herself, ready to face whatever truths awaited her, starting with the most uncomfortable truths of all. The confrontation with her past loomed large, calling her name like a distant echo, demanding she answer. The following morning, Clara awoke with a resolve that both frightened and invigorated her. The early dawn light streamed through the window, illuminating the swirling dust motes, a perfect metaphor for the clarity she sought. Today would not just be a physical battle for the ranch. It would also be a psychological confrontation with herself. She could no longer allow her past to loom like a specter, hovering over her decisions and shaping her perception of self-worth. As Clara made her way to the kitchen, she found Jake already brewing coffee, his focus intensified by the weight of their shared mission. Big day ahead, he asked, glancing up with a knowing smile that sent warmth through her nerves. Definitely, Clara replied, attempting to mirror his optimism. She retrieved a mug and felt the solid ceramic anchor her. We need to reach out to those associations today. Jake's response was a nod, but she could see the concern etched across his features. Perhaps he knew the doubts that wove through her mind. I'll gather some materials, get our story straight. This is just as much about them as it is about us. His support settled like a balm over the flickering unease inside her. She had spent years feeling like a wanderer in her own life. Now, with purpose igniting her spirit, she could feel the beginnings of a legacy shaping in her hands. They spent the morning poring over community directories, crafting emails, and strategizing approach angles. Each email felt like a step back into a world she had once been terrified of re-entering. A world of people, with their judgments and possible rejections. But with every click of the send button, she felt the suffocating grip of fear loosen just a fraction. The connections they were forging were no longer just about the ranch. They were about Clara reclaiming her narrative. As the sun reached its zenith, Clara found her thoughts turning toward sharing her past with Jake. Perhaps today was not finished with the unknowns. While navigating through the intricacies of their plan, she found moments carved out where she could voice the truths she had kept hidden. Each personal truth laid bare risked unraveling the new tether they had formed. "Jake, can we talk?" she began, her heart racing as the air thickened between them. "Of course." He set aside his notepad, offering her full attention. His gaze was unwavering, encouraging her to delve deeper. It took a moment for Clara to gather the fragments of her story. The doubts flooded her mind, but she steered them towards clarity. "I haven't always," she hesitated, pausing to adjust to the enormity of what she'd reveal. "I grew up in foster care, moved from one place to another. I guess I've always been used to being disposable." Jake's expression shifted. "That doesn't define you, Clara. You've carried it, yes, but it sounds like you've also survived it." His empathy enveloped her, and her vulnerability transformed into a discussion of resilience, a tangible thread that wove through their shared resolve. They exchanged stories beyond the surface, unraveling layers of each other's histories, fears, and motivations. Feeling a newfound strength coursing through her, Clara leaned into the conversation. "If we want to stand against the developer, it's not just about saving the land. It's about carving out a future aligned with who we are now." Her words felt liberating, as if each syllable released the burdens of the past. In confronting her origins, Clara found not just validation but empowerment, invoking storm clouds to shift rather than define her. Yet, hardened determination was matched with the unease of realization. What if her history did not align with Jake's expectations? What if he saw her past as a flaw rather than a scar of survival? In that moment of deep introspection, Clara suddenly understood the path ahead was laden with choices not just for the ranch, but for her personal evolution. Jake's response remained essential, but equally crucial would be her self-acceptance. As Clara's resolve solidified, she caught a glimpse through the window and noticed movement in the distance. The developer's representatives were arriving at the edge of the property with folding tables and a gathering force. The real moment of tension surged, demanding her attention. "Jake, we need to act fast," she said, urgency blending into their resolve. The emotional conflict between her past and the vibrant possibilities of their present evolved from uncertainty into a vivid determination. As they prepared to counter this new threat, Clara felt a surge of clarity amidst the chaos. She might still wrestle with her identity, but now she stood steadfast, ready to fight not just for the land, but for the essence of who she had become. The day had only just begun, but its weight felt monumental. What lay ahead was no longer veiled in shadows. It beckoned with the promise of confrontation, both external and internal. Would they be successful against the looming threat? Even deeper, would Clara embrace her truth, whatever the outcome? The decisive moment was coming. Clara was ready to rise and face the storm. Clara's heart raced as she and Jake stepped outside, the sun's rays now old friends to her resolve. The reality before them was stark. Representatives of the developer stood poised, confidently unfolding banners and pamphlets touting their plans for expansion. They weren't there merely to negotiate under a sunny sky. They had come to stake a claim on the land, and with it, a claim on Clara's dreams. Drawing a breath filled with newfound purpose, she could feel the weight of her past settling into a protective layer around her heart. This was the moment where she could redefine who she was, no longer the girl molded by neglect, but a woman confronting the storms of her life directly. "Let us show them we won't back down," she murmured to Jake, steel threading through her voice. The reassurance he offered with a swift nod granted her the strength to tread into the fray. Each step towards the developer's site felt like an affirmation of her commitment to this land, a declaration of her identity not merely as a resident, but as a defender. As they approached, Clara felt the eyes of onlookers scrutinizing her. The weight of judgment threatened to creep in. What did they see when they looked at her? A girl raised in the shadows of uncertainty? Or a woman ready to fight for her dreams? Clenching her fists, she reminded herself that today was about action, not perception. "Excuse me," Clara called out, her voice slicing through the idle chatter of the developer's team. Instinctively, they turned to face her. The leader, a man in a well-fitted blazer, almost too pressed for this landscape, regarded her with an almost dismissive air. We are not selling. Excuse me? He seemed taken aback, needing a moment to reconvene. Clara seized the opportunity, stepping closer. You need to hear our story first. This land represents more than a business opportunity. It's a home, a legacy. People began to gather, intrigued by the unfolding drama. As Clara spoke, she felt energy pulsing through her. Each word was a brushstroke, painting her intent a future that blended her past's resilience with her current commitment. This ranch has been a sanctuary. It is tied to generations, to struggles that we faced as a family. The leader raised an eyebrow, skepticism mingling with curiosity. There was a subtle shift in the atmosphere, ominous but also defying, as if Clara's voice could summon winds of change. People like you and me care about our heritage. But if we don't stand up now, this land will just become another statistic. The cadence of her voice quickened, drawing in the crowd around them, an outer circle of support slowly forming. Each individual nodded, a ripple of agreement that pushed back against the inertia of the developer's forces. As she continued to speak, she felt the remnants of her insecurities dissolve in the heat of her determination. This was no longer about her past. It was about the future she envisioned for herself and those who shared her space. She paused, watching as some representatives shuffled papers, bewildered by the unexpected fervor. Clara wouldn't allow herself to falter. With every heartbeat reverberating with urgency, the momentary victory was bittersweet. Despite her growth, internal conflicts loomed. Would the words resonate beyond this instant? Although she could see Jake lingering close by, his unwavering support a tether to her present self, the question still nagged at her. Was she enough? Could she truly reshape the narrative that had clung to her for so long? The answers were uncertain, but the fervor to fight for her dreams pushed her onward. Clara's thoughts swirled with possibilities. This was the changing moment she had longed for, yet it felt precarious. As she wrapped up her speech, her thoughts danced between elation and dread. The leader's expression hardened, and he shot back. You think a few words can stop our plans? This is business. And just like that, the atmosphere cracked again, tension reappearing like an unwelcome ghost. Clara realized she had only skirted the surface of what was to come. The confrontation wasn't merely with the developer. It was a battle against every fear that had threatened to imprison her voice. The pivotal moment lay ahead. A decision waited to be made, one that could amplify her voice or silence it entirely. Would she confront the looming specter of doubt with self-acceptance and assertiveness, or let it take root and undermine her burgeoning strength? With determination coursing through her, Clara prepared to answer not just him, but herself. The moment of truth was no longer merely about the fight for the ranch. It was about redefining who she was in the face of adversity. Would she emerge stronger, or would she risk everything on a choice that could fracture her resolve? She stood ready to lean into the storm. But where would that storm take her next? The moment hung in the air, a taut string vibrating with uncertainty. Clara locked eyes with the leader, her heart pounding a steady rhythm against the gravity of his dismissal. Instinctively, she raised her chin, channeling all the defiance she had amassed over years of feeling undervalued. No, she said quietly, but the resolve in her voice was a clarion call, leaving no room for compromise. You don't get to decide what this land is worth to us. The onlookers around her shifted, whispers threading through the crowd, igniting a spark of unity. Clara could feel their collective energy, their hope entwining with her own. She wasn't just fighting for a piece of land. She was battling for her identity, for the generations that had come before her, and for a narrative that didn't bow to powerful outsiders. Let us be real, the leader retorted, folding his arms across his chest. You think stories will protect your ranch? This is about profit, not nostalgia. His words were meant to intimidate, but Clara felt a surge within her rather than fear. With every exchange, she grasped a deeper understanding of herself, a revelation born from challenge. It was time to reclaim the narrative. I know this place isn't a financial statement to you. She shot back, her voice stronger, echoing through the now silent crowd. But it's the foundation of our lives, our hopes and dreams. We are the ones who know its value because we bled for it. It's not just land. It's love, it's struggle, and it's hope. Clara's heart raced. Never had she felt such a blend of vulnerability and strength. Jake stepped forward, his stance resolute beside her. "This isn't just Clara's fight," he added, his voice steady. "Everyone you see here stands with her. Every story, every life connected to this place deserves to be respected." Clara's heart swelled. She had expected to fight alone, but here was proof that her aspirations resonated beyond herself. The leader faltered, momentarily blindsided by the solidarity that surrounded Clara. But as quickly as it appeared, frustration hardened his features. "Sentimentality 1T changed the fact that we have the plans and the resources to go forward." "Maybe not," Clara replied, every word carefully measured. "But what happens when people rise together? When they refuse to be silenced? That's the kind of force that makes even the grandest plans tremble." Her pulse quickened. This was a gamble, yet she felt the tides shifting. Bracing herself, Clara could feel her past echoing like distant thunderclouds, reminding her of the timid girl who had once tiptoed around her own emotions. But now, confronting this man felt liberating. She possessed the ability to command the present and influence the future. Each heartbeat fueled her courage, pushing her to stake her claim not just on the land, but on herself. "If you go through with your plans, you will meet resistance you can't ignore," she warned, her expression fierce. "And no amount of money can erase the connections we have with this land." A quiet hush dawned over the crowd, as if they shared a collective breath, feeling the intensity of Clara's declaration. The leader's expression flickered between annoyance and contemplation, and for a fleeting moment, Clara saw a crack in his armor of confidence. But just as quickly, he composed himself, launching a counterattack to regain his footing. "People have been resisting forever. It won't stop progress. We'll see how long your voices can last against the power of the market." In that moment, Clara felt a swell of exhilaration, raw energy coursing through her. This wasn't just opposition, it was a personal challenge. She was standing at the precipice of growth, learning more about her potential with every exchange. She couldn't let fear shut her down, not now, not after fighting so hard to reclaim her voice. "Let us make a deal then," Clara said, surprising herself. "Let us take our stories, our truths, to the people who matter, the ones who live and work here." The audacity of her idea electrified her. It was risky, yet thrilling. Could she be the catalyst for change, for a movement towards understanding? The developer's gaze shifted, sizing her up for a beat too long. Clara couldn't shake the sensation that a line had been drawn, not just in the dusty soil, but within herself. Behind the expressions of the watching crowd lay the inception of something profound. Unity, empowerment, the courage to reshape her story. As the air crackled with tension, she felt the weight of uncertainty still lingering on the horizon. Would her audacity spark a deeper movement, or would it be a fleeting moment consumed by the indifferent machine of commerce? The time had come to determine whether fate lay in the hands of a few men in suits, or if her burgeoning sense of agency could transform the landscape of her life forever. A decision loomed, and Clara was ready to confront it head-on. Would she champion her cause and turn the tide, or had she just awakened a storm that could sweep her away? As the heated exchange settled into a thick silence, Clara's mind raced, piecing together her next steps like a jigsaw puzzle. There was a fire ignited inside her, one built on purpose and urgency. The moment crystallized around her as she stood at a crossroads, the path ahead shrouded in both uncertainty and possibility. What had begun as a community's defense against corporate greed morphed into a tender revelation of her own capacity for leadership. Clara's life had always felt like an unmade bed, her dreams tangled in a disarray of unmet expectations. But now, the thought of mobilizing the very people whose stories had aligned with hers offered a clarity she had never before experienced. "Your plans may seem solid," she addressed the leader directly again, her voice steady. "But your vision lacks depth. You see the land as a commodity, we see it as a lifeblood." She felt emboldened, the weight of the message enveloping her. This battle wasn't simply external. It was about confronting the fragments of herself that had long accepted marginalization. Jake's gaze locked onto hers, a silent agreement passing between them. Clara felt the undeniable connection grow stronger. Their fortitude became something tangible, a chord strummed in harmony. Empowered by their shared intent, she turned back to the crowd, willing each individual to feel the pulse of determination she had discovered. Imagine what we could achieve if we craft a narrative together. Clara took a breath, continuing, let us gather stories from everyone who holds this place dear. We need to show the world who we are and what this land truly means. We have lived and labored here. Our roots run deep, and they won't be easily torn away. With every word, she could sense a shift in those gathered. Faces that had been calm began to shimmer with promise as they mulled over her idea. Here was a collective action grounded in authenticity, something they could all contribute to. Clara's gut twisted, caught between anxiety and elation. Could she genuinely rally them around this narrative? The developer's expression darkened as he saw the mood shifting. You honestly believe your stories will stand up against legislation and contracts? He challenged, though there was an unmistakable quiver in his voice. She had struck a nerve, and Clara seized the opportunity. Not just stories, she replied, eyes blazing with resolve. Truths, connections. We'll show the world that what we have here is irreplaceable. We're not simply a footnote in your ledger, we're the heart of this land. The passion spilling from her lips felt foreign yet exhilarating. Unfamiliar, yet liberating that as she spoke. Clara sensed a new awareness dawning in the crowd. This wasn't merely about her fight. It was theirs too. Each individual represented a multitude of experiences: the farmer, the teacher, the old-timer who remembered when the land first blossomed with life. They didn't just occupy space. They infused it with history. Clara took a small, calculated step towards where the developer stood. Let us make a pact. Then, she proposed. Give us time to weave our stories and share them. Challenge yourself to listen, and if we don't touch your heart, then I'll concede defeat without hesitation. His eyes narrowed, veiling the simmering frustration beneath. There's no time for sentimentality, Clara. People move quietly to profits. But I'll entertain your little endeavor for now. With that, he retreated, but his closing words felt more of a threat than an assurance. Clara turned back to the crowd. The adrenaline coursing through her seemed to invigorate them all. In the depths of uncertainty, there existed a newfound motivation. What now? Jake whispered, a mix of excitement and apprehension in his voice. It was a loaded question, one that spoke volumes about the journey ahead. Now, Clara said, her voice softer, yet charged with purpose, we gather our voices. This is a turning point not just for us, but for every person searching for a connection that's been overlooked. That night, visions flooded Clara's mind, painting a picture of a world where her thoughts materialized into action, a realm where stories interwove to form an unyielding fabric of resilience. But just as optimism warmed her, a nagging voice chimed in. Doubt lurked like a hungry shadow. Could they really unite different lives under one banner? As the first challenge loomed ever closer, Clara wondered if the task ahead was more than she could handle. The air crackled with anticipation as she prepared to meet herself in the toughest confrontation to date, a duel against self-doubt itself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue, she recognized the true journey lay not in the battle itself, but in unraveling the parts of her that had been obscured for too long. Clara could feel the stakes escalating handedly. What awaited her as she plunged headfirst into this fledgling endeavor? Would her conviction prove strong enough to silence the voices of uncertainty whispering as she crossed into the unknown? The next morning, Clara woke with a tension coiling in her gut, as if it had merged with her very breath. Each inhale was a reminder of her ambition, each exhale a manifestation of her doubts. The sun's rays crept hesitantly through her window, illuminating the crumpled notes from last night's meeting scattered across her desk. She couldn't afford to waste time wallowing in indecision. Today would be a pivotal day. Standing in front of the mirror, she questioned her reflection. Who was this person staring back at her? Someone brave enough to challenge the status quo, but still shackled by uncertainty. Clara clutched the edges of the sink firmly, feeling her heart race. The familiar whisperings of self-doubt clawed at her resolve. But she knew she needed to shake it off. Relied on fear would only hold her back. Determined, she strategized her approach. The day wasn't just about gathering stories. It was about asserting her role as a leader. Clara envisioned how she would present the initiative to the townsfolk, sharing her desire to collect their narratives not as mere anecdotes, but as an offering to the world manifestations of their lived experiences. She gathered her materials, focusing on a few key messages that could resonate. This exercise would not just serve her agenda in rallying support. It would address the vulnerability she had discovered in herself. Each story was a thread that could connect not just the community, but her own disparate parts. The more she embraced this process, the more authenticity emerged. As she walked through town, Clara felt a weight pressing on her shoulders. The echoes of the developer's skepticism still thudded in her chest. But each step solidified her goal. She would show them. Approaching the local diner, she pushed the door open and entered, the bell chiming a familiar welcome. People glanced up from their conversations, uncertainty mingling with curiosity. Seizing the moment, Clara cleared her throat. "I'd like to gather stories about this land, about our lives. If you have something to share, memories of what made you fall in love with this place, I want to hear them." A ripple of murmurs pulsated through the diner. Clara's initial enthusiasm faced an uphill battle against skepticism. Was she merely grasping at straws? One face, an older man with a weathered expression, finally met her gaze. "And how would that make a difference, Clara?" he challenged, a hint of indignation brewing in his voice. "Because," she replied, heart thumping, "these stories are our truth. We're more than statistics or financial losses. Each of our experiences holds value that cannot be measured in charts." The words spilled from her, fervent and urgent. The man shifted in his seat, his expression unreadable. Clara held her breath, hoping to catch a glimmer of understanding. Just then, a woman sitting nearby piped up, "I could share about the time my grandmother taught me to tend to the garden. It feels like a life lesson now more than ever." Hope ignited within Clara as she encouraged them all to contribute, noting the gradual softening of expressions. A couple of others chimed in, recounting tales both nostalgic and heartbreaking, painting a vivid tapestry of their shared history. Each voice empowered Clara, and with them, the gnawing doubt began to dissipate. But as the stories flowed, shadows lingered. What if the collaborative narrative wasn't enough to stem the tide of corporate interest? Against the vibrancy of storytelling, Clara felt her faltering conviction resurface, a fierce undercurrent of uncertainty that threatened to sweep away her fragile confidence. As she wrapped up the session, Clara sensed that this was only the beginning. With each new voice came a flicker of hope, but also a weighty responsibility to carry those stories forward. Could her words be the bridge that linked their shared legacy to future endeavors? The atmosphere shifted, and Clara sensed the impending reality. She had ignited the murmurs of possibility, yet the true test lay ahead. How could she navigate the complicated terrain of claims and legality while honoring the essence of each story shared with her? As night fell, Clara pinned her thoughts in a notebook that had begun to fill with ideas and hopes. But the identity she yearned to forge felt as elusive as the horizon. The voices of doubt rose menacingly, whispering that she might not be enough to champion them through the storm brewing on the horizon. What would they think if she faltered? Would her endeavor become another footnote, lost to the relentless sweep of progress, chasing profits at the expense of legacy? The indecision threatened to paralyze her ambition. And then it hit her, a gut instinct whispered to find Jake. He hadn't just offered support. He deground her in reality. What if they united their efforts? Together, they could tackle the complexities, combining their strengths to lead the charge forward. As the candles flickered low, Clara felt the ignition of a partnership forging in her mind. Could Jake be the ally she needed to navigate the uncertainties that lay ahead? The first step toward that was to ask him to trust her, as much as she anticipated needing to trust him in return. With a sense of rising determination, she decided she would invite him to collaborate on this narrative journey. Knowing that the path ahead required more than just her singular vision, it demanded shared strength, a partnership rooted in mutual belief. As she closed her notebook, an unsettling realization washed over her. Could she truly embody the leader the community needed, or would she inadvertently become a voice for herself, drowning in layers of tension and fear? Tomorrow would bring answers, but uncertainty loomed, heavy and charged. Taking a deep breath, Clara steeled herself for the next conversation. The moment to confront both her vulnerability and potential was near. Clara awoke the next morning with a resolute clarity that was both refreshing and slightly unnerving. The chaos of mixed emotions from the previous day had settled into a single focused collaboration. She had an undeniable urge to reach out to Jake, the only person she felt could help transform her vision into a tangible initiative. With a distinct purpose now humming in her veins, she dressed with intention, each article of clothing a layer against the impending weight of her responsibilities. As she stepped outside, the crisp morning air filled her lungs, invigorating her spirit. The town felt both familiar and foreign, every corner echoing the story she had begun to gather, yet laden with anticipation of what lay before her. Today would not just be about proving her theory of connecting the community through its narratives. It was about building a bridge of trust with someone whose presence had both challenged her and offered comfort. Her walk to Jake's workshop was accompanied by a parade of burgeoning thoughts. What if he felt overwhelmed by her proposal? What if he rejected the idea outright? The gnawing doubts resurfaced, but Clara pushed them aside, reminding herself that growth often emerged from discomfort. This was the moment to confront her fears head-on, to step into the role she aspired to embody. Arriving at the workshop, she took a deep breath, steadying herself before entering. Jake was hunched over his workbench, engrossed in a project, the smell of sawdust and oil lingering in the air. He looked up as she entered, his expression shifting from surprise to a warm smile that spread across his face like the morning sun breaking through clouds. "Clara, good to see you," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "What brings you here so early?" "I need to talk to you about something important," she replied, urgency laced within her tone. As she laid out her vision, Clara watched closely for his reactions. She described how she believed their combined skills could amplify the community's voices, creating a narrative tapestry that would resist the encroaching plans of the developer. As she spoke, Jake's brow furrowed in thought, his fingers pausing their nimble movements. "I like the idea, but it's not simple. You're asking to take on a lot, Clara. What if it doesn't pan out?" His tone was cautious, and Clara sensed the gravity behind his words. "What if it does?" she countered, feeling a rush of determination course through her. "Think of the impact we could have. We can show the world what makes this place special. It's not just a business decision for them. It's our home." Jake's gaze softened, and for a moment, Clara felt the walls they had constructed between their differing perspectives begin to crumble. "All right," he conceded, "but we need a solid plan. We'll need to be transparent about the process, and everyone will need to feel included." Relief washed over Clara, but it was tempered by another wave of uncertainty. Could she truly manage this partnership with Jake, balancing her aspirations with the practicality he brought to the table? The enormity of leading this charge loomed larger, unveiling layers of responsibility she had not fully anticipated. As they discussed actionable steps, Clara felt the threads of her confidence beginning to weave tighter together. Each idea they exchanged forged not only a plan, but also a deeper trust between them. The laughter and brainstorming created an atmosphere that felt electric, yet it sparkled with an undercurrent of tension. The anxiety of potential failure loomed, but Clara pushed those thoughts aside. This was a moment of potential, a chance to redefine both their roles. However, as the conversation progressed, another thought crept into her mind. What if Jake's commitment wavered once the realities of the project set in? Would she be left grappling with an overwhelming burden alone? The thought sent a chill through her, igniting a small flame of doubt in her heart just as passion had begun to blaze. Later, as they wrapped up their meeting, Clara raised her voice slightly. "One more thing. I know there might be opposition we'll face. Can we agree to confront it together?" Jake nodded, a steely determination in his eyes that mirrored her own resolve. "Together." But as she left the workshop, the weight of that promise rested heavily on her shoulders. Clara understood that collaboration meant vulnerability, and for every story she collected, there would be moments of discomfort like her persistent fears nagging at her resolve. When the stakes were high, bonds could strengthen or unravel. She stepped into the evening air, energized but apprehensive about the next steps. As darkness cloaked the town, Clara marveled at how embarking on this path could reveal more about herself than she had ever anticipated. She felt an urgent need to ensure their voices would not just echo in vain. What would happen when the opposition arrived? Could she safeguard their dreams while battling unseen forces working against them? Determination filled her, but the looming specter of dissent shadowed her burgeoning optimism. The impending confrontation was not just external. A more profound battle within her own spirit loomed. Could she prepare for both the external struggles and the internal ones, even as she sought to amplify the community's legacy? Tomorrow would require not just collaboration, but an inward confrontation, to one that would test her as never before. Clara stood at the edge of the ranch, the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders like a familiar cloak. The struggle against the developer had transformed her perception of herself. She was no longer just an orphaned girl marred by her past, but a champion of the land she had come to love. The community had rallied around her words, lifting her from the shadows of doubt and weaving their narratives into a richer tapestry of collective identity. Today, Clara was ready. Her hands shook not from fear, but from anticipation of what lay ahead. She had gathered testimonials from the townsfolk, each story a brick laid in the foundation of their fight. With Jake by her side, she felt an irreplaceable bond of trust, a mutual understanding that transcended simple friendship. Their shared mission had given her purpose, instilling a fierce spirit to defend what they love. As they walked toward the gathering space, Clara noticed the faces of the crowd, familiar yet emboldened, eyes filled with resolve. She could feel the energy, a palpable current that surged through them, echoing the flames she felt inside. "Remember, we are all in this together," Clara urged Jake just before they stepped into the light, a quick glance affirming their shared commitment. "Ready?" he asked, firm but with a hint of warmth that grounded her. "Absolutely," she replied, the confidence in her voice ringing true. With each step, Clara embraced the responsibility she felt and the authenticity she'd unearthed. The developer's representatives awaited them, standing stiffly with expressions revealing their skepticism. Clara straightened her back and inhaled deeply, the air rich with possibilities. She opened with the stories, each voice echoing through the urgency of her own. "This ranch is our lifeblood," she proclaimed, her words rising like a crescendo, not just a line on a map or a place on an economic spreadsheet. "Each of us has a connection here, a history worth protecting." Through the meeting, she detected an array of emotions: curiosity, doubt, and even respect. Their audience, initially a hardened wall of corporate interests, had begun to soften as the people rallied around Clara's fire. Despite the daunting realities of commerce and profit, Clara realized something profound. The power of personal stories could reshape narratives and eclipse the ambitions of greed. As the meeting waned, and they emerged into the bright sunlight, Clara felt the thrill of the fight. She had stood up, no longer the girl who hid from confrontation, but a leader who commanded presence and attention. The concern about rejection faded, replaced by pride in her accomplishments. The stories had lit a beacon within her, a blazing clarity that her past was not a hindrance but the fuel for her transformation. Days turned into weeks, filled with organizing community meetings, coordinating support rallies, and bolstering connections with local groups. Clara's efforts bore fruit as they gained momentum. Media coverage began to blossom, and the developer faltered in the face of unyielding community support. Clara's vision had inspired not just resistance, but a revitalization of communal bonds. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow, Jacob turned to her on their hanched porch. "I couldn't have asked for a better partner in this," he said, his eyes sincere. Clara beamed, and in that moment, she realized she had become more than a participant in her life. She had become the orchestrator of her narrative. "Thank you for believing in me," she replied, her voice soft yet resolute. "I finally see what I'm capable of. This ranch, this community, their home." In the days that followed, amidst the ongoing negotiations, Clara's clarity grew. She understood that her past didn't define her, but had forged resilience, a characteristic that no one could take from her. It had echoed strength and fostered tenacity. Each hurdle confronting them seemed lesser than the formidable barrier she had overcome internally. The culmination of their efforts came one crisp morning in early fall, a unified community meeting where Clara addressed a sizable gathering. "Together, we have proven that we are unstoppable," she exclaimed, the warmth of their shared stories enveloping her like a protective embrace. "Let us continue this fight, not just for us but for those who will inherit this land. Let us preserve our legacy and honor every story that has brought us here. As applause erupted, Clara felt the culmination of her journey. No longer shying from her truth, she had embraced vulnerability, channeled her passion, and steered it into action. Bonds had been forged, and clarity had emerged, both in her life and among her community. She had finally found her place not just alongside Jake, but at the forefront of her life. Clara looked out at the crowd, a fierce pride swelling in her chest. She had achieved a significant personal milestone by transforming not just the ranch's fate, but her very identity. No longer a mere foster child adrift, she stood as a guardian of dreams and truths, embodying the essence of what family could mean. And in that radiant moment of self-discovery, Clara had accomplished the most vital goal of all. She had found her voice. Now, if you were moved by Clara's incredible journey, you need to subscribe now to this channel. Don't miss any of our exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep this content thriving. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Clara's inspiring journey. And remember to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness stories of personal overcoming. Don't wait even one more second to share the empowerment.